Welcome back to Preparing for the Unexpected. Today we are talking with Charlie Maclean-Bristol. A great first segment, Charlie, talking about bringing crisis management and cyber together. In this segment, we're going to talk about future incidents and horizon scanning. Now, for those that don't know, let's ask the obvious question. What is horizon scanning?
Right, horizon scanning is definition I got here is identify emerging risk threats and opportunities. So I see one of the jobs of the business continuity manager is to keep an eye on what is happening in the rest of the world and keep an eye on what is happening in the rest of the world that could affect our organization. And I'm not sure in sort of maybe in huge, massive organizations, someone whose job it is. But I think in smaller organization or there's nobody else doing it, I think it's a good job for the business continuity manager to say, keep an eye on the news, say, how does that affect us as an organization? And what can we do about it?
Especially if you've got offices in other countries too. Like, hey, is what's happening? You're over in the UK, so is what's happening in the UK? Could that impact me here in Canada because we have an office there? That kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think it is that when you look at sort of corporate risk management will look at to say, have we got enough money? Are we getting the right products? What could affect our organization? What about competitors? So there is that kind of corporate risk management element there. But often corporate risk management is looking at from the organizational point of view, and it's also looking at sort of longer term. So you do your risk register, once a year. Some people do it once every 6 months, once every sort of quarter, maybe. But it's mainly foregone on business activities. I think the job of us is to look at things that could emerge fairly quickly which could affect our organization. I think your point about the Canada bit is, I think, as part of this, what we need to understand is maybe to do some mapping of our organization. So, of course, if we got an office in Hong Kong and Singapore and Tokyo, we need to keep an eye on those news. Say, actually, there's a big earthquake in Tokyo. Hopefully, we'll know that our office is in Tokyo and our people are affected.
Mm.
But I also think we need to have a look at our supply chains. So, we've done quite a lot of stuff on mapping supply chain back to where your key bit is made. So we work with a company that makes, they sell electronic locks and they sell physical locks, padlocks and door locks and all those sort of things. All their stuff is made in China. And so they know which factories it's made in. So we did some mapping of their supply chain so they can actually have a look at to say, if an incident happened in this province in China, a flood or a fire or something like that, then actually they can know that this is mapping their supply chain so they understand that. And the stuff like if you understand your supply chain is coming from China, you look to the Middle Eastern war where the Houthis are busy, they're almost ransoming ships that go through. So unless you pay a ransom, the ships can't go through the canal, or many ships are actually going around South Africa now. So that is putting another 2 weeks on your supply chain and maybe putting extra cost on your supply chain. So if you know this is happening, you can go up to the procurement people and say, look, are you aware of that? There might be small costs coming your way, there might be time delay. Are you happy with it? So I think it's just understanding your part in the world and understanding what can and how can it be affected.
You mentioned competitors there, and that got me thinking. You could also do a horizon scan based on what your competitors are doing or aren't doing if and when they're experiencing an issue, right?
Yes, you can do. I think it is, depends what sort of business, depends what your business in. But I do think you need to almost kind of, is it a pestle scan, or Is it, supply chain mapping? And we haven't talked about managed service providers as well. Is understanding your risks and what elements are important to your organization, and then monitoring those elements, either monitoring the actual elements or monitoring what could affect those elements, so that if something you know, does occur in India, and you've got a lot of your kind of like call centers are India, or you do IT processing or one of those things, that you are aware of that, you can quickly pick that up.
And let's say, Charlie McLean Incorporated and Alex Fullick Incorporated. Charlie McLean Incorporated has an issue. Then what I should be doing over at Alex is like, how's he managing that? Is he communicating? What if the same thing happened to me? And then taking that back to make sure that, hey, yeah, we can address that, or ooh, we don't have anything in place to do that. Charlie did. That kind
Yes.
of scanning as well, right?
Yes, and I think it is that it's trying to give your organization heads up before these shocks come. Because some of the things might not come for 2 or 3 weeks, but they will come through. And if you can go and say, look, there's all the stuff with the tariffs at the moment, that's almost changing day by day. No, I was having a bit of debate with myself whether imposing tariffs, which we've seen, in Canada, and then they come back, and then Mexico, and then they come back. If you're a vehicle manufacturer in Mexico, and those vehicle parts go backwards across the border 4 or 5 times before you got finished vehicle, then you would hope that actually the procurement people or the logistics people have thought about that, because some of these tariffs they don't come out of the blue. They been told they're going to happen. And so with the new president, he said he was going to do it, so hopefully they thought about it. So sometimes it could be company issues, but I think if there is maybe tariffs on Europe, then how's that going to affect the goods to Britain? And how, if they impose tariffs in tariffs on you, how's that going to affect your organization? And it might be quite subtle. It may not be affect you at all. We've got nothing to do with Canada, we're a British firm. But actually you find that actually one of your managed service providers, they provide that, and they've got their headquarters in Canada, and it's an international organization, so that could actually indirectly affect you. So there's kind of sometimes these sort of, you squeeze a balloon and it comes expanded there, and you have to try and recognize those signals of things happening.
Can you leverage horizon scanning internally, not just externally?
Yes, I think if you're a big enough organization, you should be the especially if you're multinational, and depends upon, we work with an organization which was basically, they were a holding group, so they were like 70 people, and they basically bought companies, and basically they went in certain sectors and they buy up a whole load of companies, and they started off in UK and Ireland, and they're now in America and Hong Kong and Europe. And they basically say to the managing director, right, I want you to turn over £10 million in the next 3 years. That's your job. Go off and do it. And, we'll take the profit out and stuff like that. So some of those diverse companies where it's not sort of day-to-day control, then maybe you need to, I presume the MDs are telling their parent what's happening in their weekly or monthly meetings, but you might pick up things that they don't. So I think that's good, in a large multinational organization like that.
You communicate if you're identifying potential risks on the horizon that might impact our organization, and you're the BCM person who's doing it because you're not a multi conglomerate with
Yeah.
hopefully multiple people
Yeah.
working on this. How do you get that message up so that people hear that, hey, business continuity has identified a risk, we should look into this?
Yeah. I think this is sometimes is a little bit down to personality. You know, if you're a middle manager, usually most BCMs are sort of middle manager, maybe a bit senior. I don't think you can go to a massive or large organization and say, "Look, I'm Charlie. I think you ought to think about Middle Eastern war." and this guy's got 30 years experience in running the most massive companies there, that's not going to quite work. But I think if you can be involved in the risk management structure, there's always got sort of senior risk managers there, get in on their meetings, and your grade level may not say you attend that meeting, but I think as business continuity managers, you've got to always add value, and you often get on the top table for things that are not you would normally get to, so you might get often it happened to me in a couple of companies I've worked in, big utilities. As soon as they have a sort of major incident, you'd be called in to give your advice and what you think what things doing. So I think you need to be able to try and leverage that relationship to have that. And if you can find some risk management committees whose job it is to do this sort of stuff, you can go say, well, I'd like to kind of join this, and I can do some of the here and now risks, as opposed to you're looking at more of the sort of corporate strategies there.
So we identified horizon scanning, and future incidents can be a part of risk identification. But are there any positive things we could use that for?
Well, I think we always teach, risk and opportunity. So, I do think we have to kind of always try to not be so sort of doomy about it, and try and say, well, actually, what is the opportunities there? And I always like that one to say, even if something bad happens, if you do have an incident, you're affected, and I wouldn't have an incident just to do this, but there's always that opportunity to kind of deepen the relationship with your clients, your customers, your stakeholders. If there's an incident, preferably if it's not your fault, it's more different if it is your fault, but then they can say, well, we understood that the factory blew up and it wasn't your fault. The factory next door blew up your factory as well. But actually, you really looked after us. You kept us informed. You even purchased some, your competitor's product to make sure we got product. We really did something really good there, And if people look after you in the hard times, they think, well, we'll look after that company because they really pulled out all the stops for us. So I think, you have to look for that opportunity, even if it is just actually managing that incident well.
So let's say we perform a horizon scan. We identified a bunch of risks. What do we do with them? Do we take them to the risk committee and say, hey, you need to consider this? Or do we take them back to our business continuity colleagues and say, hey, update your plans? Or do we just wait and see what happens? Like, what do we do when we have this information now at our fingertips?
Yeah, I think there's a classic case of we've had here we had the COP, I can't remember, it's a COP24. We had events like the Commonwealth Games, It didn't tell the business continuity manager say it's coming because it's all over the news and we won the Commonwealth Games. Everybody knew it was coming, but often the business continuity manager can say, look, we know this is going to come. We know the date. And we know it's going to affect us because we've got offices in central Glasgow. So, we need to get people into work, and there's going to be hundreds of thousands of extra people in the city. So let's start planning now for how we are going to manage that. And I'm a great believer in this idea of a kind of like Commonwealth Games operating regime. So for the month the Commonwealth Games run in Glasgow, we are going to operate the business in a different way. So we might say, actually, if you're expected to come in 3 days a week, we'll not make you come in at all. We will maybe close a couple of offices there. We'll not expect people to go in by transport. We might say something about leave, whatever it is, and individual departments might decide to do different things. We had the COP the climate change thing here.
Mm.
And, there's always associated with, there's always a possibility of riots and anarchists and people smashing up and all that kind of stuff. So again, for that operating regime, do you need to come in there? Are you going to make sure you don't wear your passes out there if you've got branded clothing, because that's what you do? Are you going to do that? Are we going to close the front door and let people come in the back door? What happens if we get invaded? How are we going to deal with it? So there's lots of opportunities and often people want you to do, oh God, Charlie, if you're going to offer to do that, that'd be great to coordinate all this thing because we've got better things to do. So in those sort of things, you can offer some good ideas, brings teams together, and again for opportunity for you personally, add value. That was a cracking job that guy did. We'll get him in for the next thing that's coming up here.
And I guess when you go through that, that's when you can update your plans. Hey, if we lost a facility or a demonstration, yeah, we'll go through the back door. It's over here, or we will tell people not to take transit or not to come to the office. Things that may not have been in your plans before, but because you talked this through, suddenly you get to identify even more opportunities.
Yes, and I think and you might get people just to produce a contingency plan for that particular event, and you might say, right, all departments have to think about this, think about this, think about that, and we want to see you do a plan on that. You can't maybe do everybody's plan, but then you can put that at the back end at Annex Z of your plan, and you can maybe expand it out and say, well, if there's spontaneous protesters, then we can say, get Annex Z out, let's go for that plan, because actually we know that there's a huge big football match in Glasgow, which they have a little bit of rioting tomorrow, and we
Between
think it's
Rangers and Celtics, never.
yes. But there was quite a bit of a riot going. There's just a couple of weeks ago. But you can put those plans into place at short notice if you can, because you've done the work. So it's just, and business continuity is about adding value. It's about maybe doing stuff that other people are not doing because it's worthwhile stuff to do.
Right. So you mentioned earlier sometimes the business continuity person or whatever their position is called is a team of one or their middle management. So they've got other responsibilities as well. They can't spend all their day watching the news or listening to the radio or surfing the internet. Are there ways they can go about to be notified of things that might be coming down the pipe or that could impact them, potential risks, so that they can continue on with their daily activities?
I'll tell you, one of the things I love is, and I do this on I kind of a little bit my business, but also things that are important to me, is Google Alerts.
Mm.
So I do Google Alerts, and that will tell me every morning what the cyber incidents are, what are the business continuity incidents there. I'm interested in my home island, the Isle of Coll. So any mentions of that, I put it on my own name, so that if there's any mentions of my own name, I'm always hoping for something interesting, but never really comes out very often. But you can put those Google Alerts. They come to you, they're for free. You can skim read them every morning. Maybe you've got some key companies that provide you with service, and if they go down, you go down together. Why not put an alert on those companies? Company X financial director runs off with all the money. Company X in trouble. Then at least you can got that, and that doesn't cost you anything, and it's 20 seconds scan in the morning. Yeah, nothing interesting there. Boom, and get on with your rest of the day. So I do like that Google Alerts from doing that, and I think all of the news is sometimes so depressing, but
Every day it's depressing.
Sorry.
Every day it's depressing.
Exactly, every day it's depressing, but you have to kind of look at it. And I'm a great believer is, you can do your social media to see what's happening, but if something looks kind of quite sensational on social media, I read The Economist. I like The Economist. I'll check the Times, I'll check the BBC. if something appears like it's going to change the world on social media, and you look at those 3 papers and there's nothing on it on there, it's obviously not true or not that important. Not as important as it looks in the social media feed.
Yeah.
So I think we have to find good sources of news as well, quality sources. Unfortunately, for a lot of those 3 bits I do, you have to pay for them. Maybe get your company to pay for them, and you say that's your job is to read the paper for an hour every morning. What job is that? But those I think it is important you keep an eye on just what is happening there, because it goes round, and with decent sources, a decent source of information, and not get all your news off TikTok. TikTok may be important for knowing trends and what people are talking about, and I think that's important too. Just getting the flavor of what's going on. I sort of doom scroll through X and I kind of see what's happening, because you get a flavor of what people are talking about. And I've even got to TikTok. Well, only just recently on TikTok. My children said, "Daddy, you'll spend too long on TikTok once you get there, because they get you sussed on that algorithm. They know exactly what you like looking at." But, I think you have to look at those social media feeds as well, but you have to look at quality news, and then the truth is somewhere in between the two.
So we only have 3 minutes left. Do you have any final thoughts or messages you'd like to convey with regards to future incidents and horizon scanning?
Add value to your job. Understand your organization. So understand where, if this happens or that happens, or this bit fails or that bit fails, where you're vulnerable. And then make sure you're, as part of the organization, you can take this to somebody and say, "Look, I think we might have an issue there." Or, it's just been announced that the Commonwealth Games coming back to Glasgow again, actually, and I'm not sure it's this year or next year. But make sure it's just about adding value, but it's about being aware of the environment you work in. And if someone else is not doing, you should do that as well.
Kind of like being proactive. Don't be reactive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, on that note, we've come to the end of this segment. Charlie, it's been great chatting with you, talking about crisis management and cyber, bringing them together, and future incidents and horizon scanning. It's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your time.
Thanks very much. Till next time.
Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be another time. Everyone watching and listening, stay prepared, everybody. If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.